Larken Rose here. This one should be pretty short, for once, maybe. So, Amanda and I were watching one of those dragon-y type series, House of the Dragon, the prequel to Game of the Thrones, whatever. Which, pretty good, you know, half decent. Cool effects, cool dragons, things like that. Does a great job of ruining the Disney version of royalty and princesses. And no, royalty is a horrible, destructive, insane monstrosity and abomination to humanity. But there was a particular scene that it suddenly occurred to me how silly it is. It's just, there's a bunch of people in the courtyard, and there's, like, younger kids practicing their sword play and stuff and being trained in combat. And it suddenly occurred to me that in that setting, in that culture, in that society, to understand what they think of as right and wrong and morality, you'd have to pause everything and go, because if somebody's beating somebody else up or bossing somebody around or something, you have to pause it and go, wait, I don't know what's right or wrong until I ask who everybody here is related to. Because the people who are related to certain people of royal bloodline, they're allowed to be violent assholes to everybody else. That's okay, because divine right of kings and all that crap. And the other ones aren't. And the fact that there really was this dynamic for a huge amount of human history where people really believed that ruling classes had the, you know, and kings and royalty, we're going to pass on our right to rule to, you never had the right to rule, it's bullshit. And then they argue about, like, bloodlines, and is this really as if that makes any difference to morality, as if anybody, regardless of any of that, ever actually has the right to rule anybody. So it was just funny to me that in that little scene, if you pause it, like, all the people there would have to have their basis of morality depend on knowing who everybody there is related to and who they're the children of and things like that. And if they find out that, oh, you weren't the children of this person, you were the child of that person, now morality changes. Now you're not allowed to boss around these people, and these people get to boss. It's just so insane. The idea that you couldn't figure out morality without knowing random, arbitrary, like, blood relationship things. That's not how morality works. So that's the funny part. The sad part is, most people still have a belief that is just that stupid, only you don't usually have to inquire about the differences because they think in order to determine morality, you have to know which of these people are acting as agents of an ethereal, magical, invisible thing called government, because then morality doesn't apply the same to them. Now, usually the thugs of the state are wearing uniforms that say, I'm a thug of the state, but not always. Sometimes they're undercover and things like that. But modern American society is basically just as stupid as the people who believed in royalty. They just changed the excuse because the idea of, bloodlines or some moistened bent lobbed a scimitar at me. After a while, people kind of outgrew that and were like, you can't have the right to rule based on who you were born to or some weird legend that doesn't make any sense anyway. That's bogus. So the control freaks were like, oh crap, they figured it out. Okay, then in that case, wait, we still have the right to rule you. I mean, represent you and serve you by way of, we're going to let you vote for us. Now, we'll tell you which people you're allowed to vote for, so you don't get to choose that. We'll form political parties, we'll put on a puppet show, and then we'll let you choose. It's still the ruling class deciding all of that, every last bit. We don't give a crap who you actually want to be in power. In fact, if somebody comes along like Ron Paul that a bunch of decent people actually want to be president, we're going to, demonize him and attack him and silence him and pretend he doesn't exist and everything we possibly can, because we don't really give a crap what you want, despite all this BS about democracy. Nobody in power gives a crap about democracy. But they had to make the lie more complicated because people outgrew the idiocy of divine right of kings. But they haven't yet outgrown the idiocy of divine right of politicians. Well, now there were these constitutions, and you have a House and a Senate, and then a presidency, and you have these different branches, and they're going to make sure that it's all bullshit, start to finish. It's just a more complicated excuse for authoritarian bullshit than bloodlines. That's all. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. So if you look out at a courtyard or a street or something, and you go, oh, people are interacting, oh, that guy has a badge. Well, he's allowed to just stop people at random and interrogate them, and maybe for some random weird arbitrary offense that didn't threaten or hurt anybody, he's allowed to like put them in a cage because they had a plant they weren't supposed to, or the tint on their car windows was 1% darker than it was supposed to be, that some political parasite somewhere decided that mattered. Suddenly that's legitimate. And so the way people view morality is still patently stupid because they think it's different for different people. Now, if you ask the average person, does right and wrong apply to everybody? Most statists will say, well, yeah, of course. If it's wrong for me, it's wrong for you. Because they really and truly do not view thugs of the state as just people. Well, that's not a person doing something. That's the law being enforced. Okay, what the hell is that? Well, it's the rules that we all must live by. What rules? What are you talking about? You mean like don't attack people? No, I mean what got written into legislation. By who? By people. Okay, so it's still just people. So it's people making shit up and other people using violence to enforce the made-up shit on other people. Just like royalty. Just like having a ruling class. Oh, no, because now we have constitutional representative governments that are doing the will of the people. Oh, really? So it's the will of the people to have a giant gang of crooks robbing and violently dominating everybody. Really? That's the will of the people? Pretty sure if you asked every single one, would you like to be not taxed anymore? Pretty much every single one would say, yeah, that'd be cool. Stop robbing me, please. So no, it's not the will of the people. That's just a more elaborate and in some ways more ridiculous excuse for authoritarian domination and for pretending that morality is different for certain people because of their bloodlines. I mean, because they were elected or appointed or got a job as a cop or a tax collector or a bureaucrat or some other parasitical agent of authoritarian domination. And people still think that changes morality because they view those people not as just people, but as representatives of the crown. I mean, government. It's the same bullshit. It's just the same bullshit repackaged. Notice they even talk in similar terms. Like, the crown has decided. Like, royalty has, for a long time, has done this weird thing. We are not amused. We aren't we. There's only one of you, you psycho witch. They talk about themselves as the crown or the British Empire. It's just so bizarre. Now, even in Britain, the people delusional enough to still give a crap about their royalty bullshit, most of them have outgrown the notion that that actually gives anybody the right to rule anyone. They just sort of like the pomp and circumstance and idiotic rituals. all that crap, at least some of them still do. But you look at the terminology where they talk about the crown has decided. Really, you have a sentient crown? That's pretty impressive. Oh, no, it's not actually a crown. Well, then what the hell are you talking about? Well, it's just some people decided to boss you around, but if we say it that way, everyone's going to go, well, who the hell are you? You're just some guy. So we have to talk as if we're not just some guy. We represent the crown and the royalty and the blah, 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 and the government. Oops, same frickin' thing. Same ridiculous terminology and rhetoric to pretend it isn't just people dominating people. That's all it is. That's all government and politics is. And all the bullshit about we have the rule of law, as I've explained before, that doesn't mean anything. somebody made up a threat and forced other people to comply and sent men with guns to hurt them if they didn't. That is the literal reality of what every government is. Every single one. And yet they talk, no, I'm just enforcing the law. What, you mean the threat of that jackass over there? No, it's the law. It's the law of the land. So now the dirt's writing this law? What the hell are you talking about? No, but we went through the legislative process and the House voted, and then they sent it to the Senate and sent back the bill, and then it went to the president's office to sign. Yeah, that's all just corrupt, lying sacks of shit issuing a threat or a demand to a bunch of other people. And all of the rhetoric that doesn't just describe it like that is just a lie to make you fall for something just as stupid as the divine right of kings. Well, we're acting on behalf of the people when we rob the people. No, you're not. You're acting on behalf of you for the interests of you and nobody else, and you don't give a crap about anybody else. And the fact that humanity has, on the one hand, figured out so much stuff, and our technology and our discoveries of so many aspects of the natural world and science and all that, and the things we've been able to invent and create, we, collectively, the human race. And yet most people still believe the most batshit loony rhetoric, as if the law is something, as if constitutions are something, as if democracy is something. You can't alter morality by having a bunch of people saying, we want something immoral to be moral now. Yay! It's not how morality works, dumbass. But that is democracy. That is the foundation of democracy. The idea that if enough people vote for something, then an immoral act becomes moral for agents of the government to do. That's bonkers. It's immoral, it's stupid, it's irrational, it's insane. All of the rhetoric, all of the terminology that you ever hear from the legacy media and from the ruling class when they talk about the ruling class dominating the victim class, which is everybody else, it's all just bullshit, and it's just as stupid as Divine Right of Kings. It's just more complicated. So I would suggest, now a lot of people who follow what I do already know that stuff, but even if you know that, keep an eye out in the news and see how often the terminology is there. See how literally every story having anything to do with politics or government or law or legislation or the police or taxes or anything of the sort, they never, ever, ever, ever just describe it literally. They never describe the literal reality of what's happening. They always hide it behind these bullshit terms and pretend, just like in that courtyard, that morality is different for these people than it is for those people. These people are allowed to steal because it isn't stealing. They're tax collectors acting on behalf of our representative constitutional republic, yada, 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 bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. And the fact that humanity is advanced in so many ways, intellectually and technologically, and still believes that stupid crap, it's just astounding. And the thing is, if you can even get people to look closely at the terminology and get them to even think about, well, what does that actually mean? Like, are we pretending that anything that goes through the, cult ritual legislative process must be legitimate? And we should go along with it, even when it's like profoundly evil and obviously evil? Is it still okay? Is it still making evil into good? Because law and government and it's necessary for society to have government. So even just people starting to look at this is a huge part of humanity outgrowing this silliness. Because no, morality doesn't depend on your bloodline. It doesn't depend on your job. It doesn't depend on elections. It doesn't depend on legislation. It's the same for everybody. If I don't have the right to steal your money for some good cause, neither do tax collectors. the fact that that needs to be explained to anybody shows the depth of the statist indoctrination in most people's minds. And the fact that most people will zealously defend these patently ridiculous ideas that they've been taught to believe shows how much work we still have to do to drag people out of the insanity that they were indoctrinated into. Because they're zealously defending their own abuse and subjugation and extortion and everything else. Because they look at that courtyard and they really do think that morality is different for different people. Not because of bloodlines anymore. They used to believe that stupid crap. Now they believe different stupid crap, and it's because of legislation and law and government and the law of the land and yada, yada, yada. It's no more intelligent. It's just more complicated bullshit. Thankfully, lots of people are slowly starting to look at it and go, why did we ever believe that? And I can look back on when I was a statist and say, that's astonishing to me that I ever thought that crap made any sense. Like, I don't consider myself a complete moron. I think I'm pretty smart in a number of areas, but for a big chunk of my life, I didn't notice that I was taught something utterly ridiculous, not to mention immoral, insane, and horrendously destructive, and I didn't question it. And so I'll end by pointing out again, if nobody ever suggests to some person that they even look at that, they probably never will. So feel free to be one of those weirdos who suggests that people think about that stuff. And if you want to be way better at communicating that, you can do Candles in the Dark. And hopefully, at some point, you could just send them to The Mirror, if I ever finish that humongous project, which will do the same thing, all by itself, because to sway the whole world away from statism, you don't even have to teach them anything they don't already know. You just have to gently get them to look at the fact that their own ability to reason and their own moral conscience never, ever, ever matches their political beliefs. And once somebody sees that conflict, and I remember seeing it myself, that's the only time they have a chance to go, what's this authoritarian crap and like legislation? And no, right and wrong is just right and wrong. Weird political rituals and scribbles don't change that. When people figure out that, literally just that, that is the end of war and most oppression. But easier said than done. Get to work on it right now. I command you.